If you're on this half of the room, then turn to the page, if anybody in your group has the book, turn to the page that it talks about God's concern for those who are poor and in need, which would be 61. What was that, 61? 61. And if you're on this half of the room, then in your groups, do the one that's about God's grace, which would be, what is that? So I listed a question, I hope you can see it. One question for those on this part of the room. Take a few moments and skim over that part of the chapter, it's just a couple of pages, thinking about this. Hamilton contends that God is not requiring us to share our wealth because it's not ours to begin with. What does he mean, and how do you respond to that idea? So there's a lot of things that he talks about, but this is one of them. So read through those pages and then talk a little bit in your groups about this idea. And if you're on this part of the room, your question here is this. We receive blessings from God even when we cannot earn them and do not deserve them. This idea is directly counter to the idea that God helps those who help themselves. What has been your experience in this regard, and how do you respond to this? So, does that make sense to everyone, what your group is doing? This is kind of like what we did last week. Just take a couple of minutes and skim through those pages, and then talk about this idea. Even if you don't read the whole thing, you should have enough that you can talk through this idea.
That's what it's saying. So I don't read that statement. We're trying to earn it. We might think we are coming to church and some things. But in all honesty, that doesn't mean anything. Guys have to do people. Well, I mean, it's anything, whether it's money, whether it's I'm still back on the first thought. What I've never heard the word only. That's what I want to make sure that God helps us with. Except I've never heard only. The only is what I'm questioning. Okay. Just, no, I've heard it in my life. I think that's what, yeah, so where are we going to find I just, it doesn't seem he doesn't fail. Oh, he doesn't use the word.
Put it in the part and you say God has but I never heard the word.
Lottie says it's not in the word. For some reason, maybe he just misspoke on the tape. I mean, I was going to still. Yes, he's the one that was reading. Yes, yeah, he was the one. He said it every time that he said it. Yeah.
Is that not exactly because he said since the second year yeah. It's not our will. He's asking the way God is not requiring you.
Somebody had lesser, somebody get very small.
You're not saying it was a share.
No, but I'm saying, but there are some, I guess what I'm trying to say, that maybe.
So how do we?
Let's see.
But how do we?
There are some.
I can remember, I don't know if it was done intentionally, but I remember when I was in 4-H club,
Intelligence to get even a job. So that is the type, that is the most, when all is done, is right. You try to, this is what I'm to provide them. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
now I work for a case dealer, we would be, probably it would be, Wayne Hunt would tell me to say, our contract's not leaving. But I can remember that, I think we did. It takes place fire, I can imagine what it's like.
Even they might have a talent and abilities, but they're being considered not.
That's fake, that's we've done that for whatever reason. They thinking how to provide, but they're helping.
There would be people if they go to a they do not choose to have the children and things like that. They also raise by they can
They choose not to, because for their economic basis.
yeah, because they can't survive. So it's our society. I'm talking about something truly.
Okay, let's come back together. And I'm wondering, first of all, would somebody from this side of the room help those over here understand, first of all, why Hamilton contends that we are not to share our wealth? Could someone read that or explain what that idea means? The idea that God doesn't require us to share our wealth because it's not ours to begin with. Would one of you help this side of the room who didn't read that or understand that? Go ahead.
I would take issue with that because I think that the fact it doesn't belong to us means that we share it equally with everybody. It isn't ours to share.
I think it's where you put the emphasis on in the sentence. He's not asking us to share our wealth because it's not ours. That doesn't mean he's not asking us to share. That's the way I read it.
I can read what it says in here in the book. It says, and it involved recognition that God is the ultimate source of wealth and property. God is essentially saying, you're not being required to share your wealth because the fields were not yours to begin with. They ultimately belong to me. My commandment to leave part of the field unharvested is my strategy for making sure my people who are struggling have enough.
Thank you, Nancy. And that's what that section is referring to is in the Hebrew scriptures when God commands the Israelites to leave part of the field unharvested for others to come through. So I think that all three of you are right, and that is what he's saying, like Sheila said, is that the emphasis is that it's not our wealth, it's not my wealth. And so then the implication is then that sharing it we do out of gratitude and thankfulness for what we're entrusted with, not because it's mine in a possessive kind of way. So how do you respond to this? What are your feelings when you hear that?
Well, without getting too political, to me that speaks volumes for kind of what's going on in our country right now with healthcare and welfare and different things, in the sense of it's easy for us to say, well, I worked my butt off for my money. And I'm not putting my money towards someone else because I worked for this. This is mine. And I earned this, and it's not fair to share that with someone else.
Does that mean that we give away everything we have?
No.
I had a friend once in seminary who believed that. He thought that it was sinful to have any possessions, like any at all. And he didn't last very long, to be honest with you, because I think that the fallacy of his systematic theology pretty quickly was shown that, of course, we have possessions, and of course, when we work and we are smart with our money, there is, we have material possessions, and that is not inherently sinful. Maybe another way to think about it would be, what's our attitude around that? Anyone else want to share anything on that?
I think that's the secret, is your attitude towards it. What's the old saying? I think that isn't thou, a man cannot serve God.
Two
and
masters.
mammon. You can't serve two masters, so.
Though I think, to put a little twist on that verse, trying to pull it out from the archives of my childhood Bible memorization, it doesn't talk about money, it talks about the love of money, right? That we can't love two masters. And so it's not even necessarily that God and money are enemies, but that God and the love of money are enemies.
I guess the other thing I'm taking from that is that generosity is not required, but it is a wonderful gift. Be generous.
Hamilton makes the point that in this passage, it was required, but that was from God to a specific group of people at a specific time. So that is his point, that for them, it was a requirement, but I don't know that we would necessarily say that's a requirement for all of us now.
Would you read it one more time?
I'm sorry, read
Read the passage.
that passage? Yeah, I've got it.
I don't have the book.
Okay, so he's referring to Leviticus 23, which says, when you harvest, this is God speaking to the people. When you harvest your land's produce, you must not harvest all the way to the edge of your field, and don't gather every remaining bit of your harvest. Leave these items for the poor and the immigrant. I am the Lord your God. That is a serious command. God insisted that farmers intentionally leave part of their crop on their property unharvested. Instead of consuming it themselves or selling it, this portion was to be left for those who were not able to make ends meet, or for the strangers in the land. The command involved compassion and charity, but also the dignity of work. The poor can harvest a portion for themselves. And it involved recognition that God is the ultimate source of wealth and property. God is essentially saying, you're not being required to share your wealth because the fields were not yours to begin with. They ultimately belong to me. My commandment to leave part of the field unharvested is my strategy for making sure my people who are struggling have enough.
Yes, but all of us do not have fields anymore. We have other jobs, so we don't need to harvest all of our salary necessarily for ourselves. And if it's God's money, we wouldn't be giving away our money. We would be giving away God's money. And that is something, and he has always given.
The inner thinking of the person involved is, to me, is he leaving that for the poor because that's what he wanted to do for the poor, or because God wrote somewhere that this is what you are to do? So I think your inner thinking is what my way. We need to give him credit for our successes physically or within ourselves. We can talk about it from now till doomsday, which we're all doing, but it all boils down to what's within ourselves.
Which I think is maybe why it's even harder now, as Tom pointed out, because it's not a requirement, right? So when we have the choice, then it really matters how we choose to respond.
I kind of differ with Tom on that. I'm sorry, Tom. The covenant that God made with Abraham, that he was gonna bless Abraham, but he was called to be the blessing, you know, and that he would, that the blessing would kind of keep on, you know. So with that covenant, or that agreement or whatever that we have as people of God, you know, that we, if we're blessed and we are blessed, that we should share that without even question, without question.
Without question, you should be generous. I don't think it's an either or choice. I think you're a Christian, you're generous, and you take these people who can't help themselves and you help them. It's not a choice if you're a Christian, I don't think.
I'm kind of stuck on the word requirements, because I think if you're required to do something, or you're told to do something, or you feel like you're made to, it's not there's no joy in that. But if you make a decision to help someone, then you get a good feeling from that as well.
And that feeling comes up.
Yeah.
I was thinking when we read that piece of scripture about leaving some on the edge of the field, not many people in here old enough to remember Mr. Pete Thomas, but he was one of the better businessmen I ever knew. And he told me something one time that I've never forgotten about. He liked to shake his finger at you when he was talking. He said, "Boy, don't ever forget. In anything that's taking place, if everybody doesn't win out of it, it is doomed to failure. So if you're a business person and you try to get every last dot, jot, and titter and leave nothing for anybody else, you will ultimately fail, one way or another." And I thought that was one of the best pieces of advice I ever heard. Everybody has to win in anything.
Well, and it goes back to the word I think somebody used as attitude. What is your attitude about, you know, like Lauren said, helping, you know, welfare and helping people and healthcare and all that? If we gripe and complain about it, we still have to pay our taxes, so it's gonna help people. We may fuss and fume and complain about it, or we can accept and realize, you know, with our attitude that money's gonna help everybody. I guess it's just kind of, you can be miserable and angry about things, or you can.
You don't have to like it, you just have to do it.
So, you know, we're required to pay taxes, but you know, we're required to understand and see, you know, what good they make.
I was just gonna say, I too also think we should look at the word wealth and not just specifically think money. Could wealth mean wealth of knowledge, wealth of resources, you know? Some of us are in good physical shape, we can do different things, that it doesn't just mean giving our money to the poor, but providing our spiritual gifts, our passions, what we're good at, to not just give them money to get health care, give them money to get food, but finding ways to change everything to do with that so that they're able to eventually help themselves.
Well, and what I'm hearing from that, and I think this is something that we've all kind of been talking about, that it's not a dollar amount that we're required to give. It's that when I look at my own life, the resources I have, whether those are material or otherwise, am I using those in the way that God would want me to use them for the betterment of the entire community, for the betterment of everyone? Or am I hoarding those resources, material or otherwise, to get further ahead myself? Before we go, would anyone on this side of the room like to speak a little bit to this question about God's grace? The point here is that, and there's ways in which we are all helpless, right? There are ways in which we all need the help of God. Anybody like to speak on that? Clearly that was a really resonating point.
Well, the whole point of God's grace, I'll speak to it, because Adam Hamilton's theology, it says that God's grace goes before, it's unmerited, it's undeserved, and it's always available for more. So it any point in time, whether you know it or not, need it or not, ask for it or not, it's constantly been given to you. And at some point, you will accept the grace, recognize the grace, and then you get even more. So your response to that grace can only give you more grace, but it's not, your response is not contingent upon it.
There's nothing we can do to earn the grace of God.
Unmerited, undeserved, unconditional, and there before you breathe the breath, just waiting for you to use it and need it, and just live in it. So it kind of takes away that whole human response. Necessary. It's necessary once you know it's there to do something with it, but it's not needed just to get a lot of it.
She did a good job.
That was
standing
you.
up for her Baptist
It's been stewing over here.
No, I'm glad you said that because when we're talking about things like grace and helping ourselves, you know, it's easy to think about only the bank accounts, right? It's easy to think about helping others in the context of writing a check. And then it's easy to think about the help that God gives us in providing that bank account, when in fact what God does give us, which is completely unmerited, is something so much more than that. And that is the grace that we are all given. Thank you for that.
I always joke with Mary, and she thinks the Methodists have a monopoly on grace. I mean,
We believe in grace too.
We patent it, it's copyrighted.
every time Grace comes up in worship, it's like, see, I'm like,
I wanted to end with this, and this is about more of that first part that we were talking about, not this intangible idea of the things that God gives us. But this is the image that kept coming to mind as I was thinking about this earlier today, that when it comes to helping ourselves and helping others, it's not an either or, right? It's not that we thank God for our dinner, as Adam Hamilton says, and it miraculously appears on our table. There's work that goes into it, and we recognize what we can't do for ourselves. And we recognize with gratitude the things that we have been given, and the families that we're a part of, and the earth that we have, and the systems that we're a part of, the fact that we were born in the time and the place that we were. We recognize all of these things together so that we continue to help others in the name of God, and that God continues to use us. So I hope that that gives you some more to think about this coming week. That yes, there's always ways that we need to help ourselves, and there's always ways that we are all completely helpless and reliant on the grace of God. So I encourage you this week to think more about that, to think about the attitude with which you share your resources. And if you have time in the next week, go ahead and read, is it chapter
3.
Is it 3 we're doing next week?
what is 3?
I was going to say,
We just did it night, so.
well, yes, it is. Yep, we're going to do chapter 3 next week. So go ahead and read that, and I will close us in prayer. Gracious God, thank you for all of the things that you give us and all of the blessings we have and those that we don't even see or recognize most of the time. I pray that you would give us discernment as we go through this week to recognize the gifts that are from you and to see the ways that we are able to help ourselves and the ways that we are helpless. We love you so much. In Jesus' name.